The video contains sensitive courtroom testimony. Viewer discretion is advised. This content is intended for educational and entertainment purposes only. Kid's testimony didn't just shake the courtroom, it chilled everyone to the bone. With a calm but haunted tone, he spoke of moments that no one saw coming, moments tied to fear, manipulation, and quiet threats that left the room frozen. As he spoke, even Diddy's defense team seemed rattled. What revealed wasn't just damaging, it terrified everyone listening. Starting from May 5, the courtroom buzzed with a mixture of anticipation and intensity as the highly publicized trial of Diddy, Combs began. This was not just a trial about allegations. It was a deep dive into the dark corners of a life lived in the spotlight, exposing a world of control, abuse, and power hidden beneath the celebrity gloss. The process began with jury selection, where potential jurors were meticulously questioned to ensure they could set aside the swirling public opinions and remain impartial. This phase was critical, lasting several days, because everyone knew that what would follow was going to be emotionally charged and complicated. By May 12, the trial moved into the crucial phase of witness testimonies, beginning with Cassie Ventura, Combs' former girlfriend. Cassie's testimony quickly became the emotional core of the trial. She recounted her years with Combs, painting a picture that contrasted sharply with his public image. Cassie told the jury about the freak-offs, wild parties orchestrated by Combs involving drugs and male escorts, which were far from voluntary on her part. She revealed a disturbing cycle of coercion and blackmail, explaining how Combs forced her participation through threats and manipulation, including using secretly recorded videos to control her. The trauma in her voice was palpable as she described how the pressure to attend these events was relentless and frightening. The tension in the courtroom peaked on May 14 when the prosecution played surveillance footage from a 2016 incident at the Intercontinental Hotel in Los Angeles. The video showed Combs violently grabbing, kicking, and dragging Cassie across the floor. The grainy yet unmistakable footage was a raw visual testament to the abuse Cassie described. It stunned the jury and spectators alike, making the allegations no longer just words but undeniable reality. Cassie's calm narration, alongside the violent images, created a stark contrast that deeply moved those watching. Over the next few days, Cassie continued her testimony, detailing the emotional and physical toll of the abuse she endured. She spoke about the aftermath, including a $20 million settlement she received in 2023 as part of a civil lawsuit against Combs. While the money was substantial, she emphasized it could never erase the pain and trauma. Additionally, she mentioned another settlement with the hotel involved in the assault, underscoring the seriousness of the situation and the legal recognition of the harm she suffered. May 17 brought George, Combs' former executive assistant, to the stand. His testimony offered a window into the chaotic and secretive world behind Combs' public persona. Described an exhausting work schedule, often exceeding 100 hours a week, where his duties went far beyond normal assistant tasks. He was responsible for cleaning up after the infamous freak-offs, purchasing drugs, and managing false identities to cover up illicit activities. His detailed descriptions revealed how normalized the illegal and abusive behavior had become in Combs' circle. Also about witnessing Combs physically assault Cassie and another woman, providing first-hand accounts of violence that corroborated Cassie's story. His decision to leave in 2015 was driven by his unwillingness to be complicit in the abuse he observed. Morales, a makeup artist who worked closely with Combs on May 19. Her account was haunting. She described moments of fear and helplessness, including an incident aboard Combs' private jet where Cassie screamed for help during a violent confrontation, but no one intervened. Morales' testimony highlighted the culture of silence and fear that surrounded Combs. Even those in his close circle felt unable or unwilling to act, caught in a web of intimidation and loyalty that allowed abuse to continue unchecked. Her words added a chilling layer to the narrative, showing how deeply the pattern of control and fear extended. Dr. Dawn, a forensic psychologist, provided expert testimony on May 20, helping the jury understand the psychological complexity behind the victim's experiences. She introduced the concept of trauma bonding, explaining how victims of prolonged abuse develop emotional attachments to their abusers, making it difficult to leave even the most harmful relationships. Dr. Insights gave context to Cassie's story and the testimonies of others, helping to explain the paradox of why victims often remain silent or return to their abusers. Her testimony was vital in framing the emotional and mental impact of the alleged abuse. Physical evidence was also a significant part of the prosecution's case. On May 21, the court was presented with the results of a federal raid on Combs' Miami mansion. Agents uncovered a large cache of items including drugs, firearm parts, and more than 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant. These findings suggested a systematic environment of illegal drug use and potential exploitation. The volume and nature of these items supported the prosecution's portrayal of Combs' operation as a criminal enterprise, not just a dysfunctional personal life. As the trial progressed, the jury was confronted with a mix of harrowing testimonies, emotional accounts, expert analysis, and stark physical evidence. Cassie's vivid storytelling about coercion and violence, backed by surveillance footage, gave the jury a clear glimpse into the pain she endured. George's insider perspective revealed how far the secretive world of Combs' entourage extended, filled with illegal activities and normalized abuse. Morale's testimony exposed the fear and silence that enabled the continuation of violence, while Dr. Psychological Insights helped explain the complicated emotional dynamics at play. The physical evidence from the Miami raid grounded the case in concrete facts, showing that the allegations were more than just personal disputes. They were part of a larger pattern of criminal behavior. The defense's attempts to dismantle these narratives were met with the steady flow of testimony and evidence, creating a complex but compelling story that demanded careful consideration. It was clear that the jury was being asked to navigate a challenging path through conflicting stories, emotional trauma, and the stark realities of abuse and control. The court had heard about wild parties and coercion, physical violence and intimidation, silence and fear, all woven together into a troubling portrait of power misused. The trial is far from over, with more witnesses and evidence still to come, but the days from May 5 till now laid the foundation for a story that went beyond headlines and rumors. It was a story of courage from those who spoke out, of the shadows lurking behind fame, and of the pursuit of justice amid complexity and pain. Outside the courtroom, public interest remained intense. Media coverage followed every testimony, every piece of evidence, and every emotional moment. Social media buzzed with opinions and reactions, but inside the trial room, the focus was on the facts and the truth. The jury's task was daunting, to sift through layers of emotion, contradiction, and raw evidence to reach a verdict that would decide the fate of one of the most influential men in the entertainment world. As the trial moved forward, it became a powerful reminder that no one is above the law and that even the stars can hide the darkest secrets. The coming weeks promised more revelations and drama, but for now, the story told through those days in May painted a vivid and unsettling picture, a story about control, abuse, and the struggle to break free. On May 22, the trial took an unexpected turn when the most surprising testimony yet came forward. One that shook not only Diddy but also the jury to their core, leaving everyone in the courtroom stunned and questioning everything they thought they knew. On May 22, Kid took the stand in the trial of Diddy Combs and delivered a detailed and gripping testimony that exposed the dark and frightening events he endured due to his connection with Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. His story began with a chilling phone call he received in December 2011 from Cassie, who was deeply afraid. She told him she believed Diddy had found out about their brief relationship, and her fear was so palpable in her voice that immediately went to her side. He picked her up and took her to a hotel, trying to protect her from what was about to unfold. But the threat was only beginning. Recounted that soon after, he was contacted by Capricorn Clark, Diddy's assistant, who informed him that Combs and an associate had forcibly taken Cassie to Combs' Hollywood Hills home. This was no casual encounter. It was a clear act of control and intimidation. When returned to his own home later that day, he discovered unsettling signs of intrusion. His security cameras had been tampered with and moved. The Christmas presents he had carefully bought for his family were opened and disturbed, and his dog was locked inside a bathroom. It was an invasion of privacy and a deliberate act to intimidate him, and he immediately called the police to report what had happened. This incident sent a clear message: no one close to Cassie was safe. The fear escalated dramatically in January 2012, when Kid's 911 was set on fire right in his driveway. The fire was deliberate and vicious. His dog sitter called him in a panic, warning him that his car was ablaze. When arrived, he saw the destruction. The roof of the car was slashed open, and a Molotov cocktail had been thrown inside the vehicle. This violent act was unmistakably meant as retaliation and intimidation. That he firmly believed Combs was behind this attack, especially since Cassie had previously that Combs had threatened to blow up Scar. This wasn't a vague threat anymore. It had turned into a terrifying reality. Despite the danger, attempted to confront Combs directly. He arranged a meeting at a Los Angeles hotel, hoping to discuss the car fire and find out the truth. When he faced Combs, said he asked him about the attack, but Combs' any involvement, responding coldly, "I don't know what you're talking about," described Combs' demeanor during that meeting as chilling and emotionless, likening him to a Marvel supervillain. There was no remorse or empathy, just a cold, ruthless indifference that sent a strong message about how Combs viewed those who challenged him. After this tense encounter, chose not to escalate the situation further, not wanting to be drawn into more conflict or danger. However, he made it clear in his testimony that he was certain Combs was responsible for the break-in, the car fire, and the threats. The fear and intimidation he experienced were real, and the retaliation he faced was no accident. Throughout his testimony, Kidd shared the emotional weight of these events. He didn't just talk about physical threats and property damage. He described the emotional toll of living under fear and constant threat. The sense that his home was violated, that his safety was at risk, and that even his dog was caught in the crossfire left a lasting impact. He conveyed how the fear didn't just disappear after the incidents but lingered long after, a reminder of the power and reach of Combs. His testimony gave the jury an intimate look into the consequences of Combs' alleged campaign of intimidation. It showed how a powerful figure could use fear and violence to control others and punish those who crossed him. Story connected closely with Cassie's earlier testimony and the prosecution's narrative, reinforcing the pattern of threats and retaliation. By describing each step in detail, the initial call from Cassie, the forced removal of Cassie to Combs' home, the invasion of his own house, the burning of his car, and the cold confrontation with Combs, provided a clear timeline of escalating intimidation. His testimony was not just a series of events, but a personal journey through fear, violation, and courage. In the courtroom, his calm and honest recounting of these traumatic moments brought the seriousness of the case into sharp focus. Kidd's experience was a vivid reminder that the trial was about real people enduring real harm, not just headlines or gossip. His testimony stood as a powerful first-hand account of what it meant to be caught in the middle of this dangerous conflict. This detailed recounting left no doubt about the seriousness of the threats and violence Kidd faced. His voice painted a picture of someone who endured targeted retaliation simply because of his association with Cassie and his refusal to be silenced. The testimony revealed the extent of Combs' influence and the lengths he allegedly went to punish those he viewed as threats. Before we tell you about Diddy's defense team's response, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Kidd's shocking testimony in the comments. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more updates. In the latest chapter of Diddy, Combs' high-stakes federal trial, his defense team stepped forward with a unified front, composed of some of the most formidable legal minds in the country. With the courtroom heavy with tension after testimonies from high-profile witnesses, including Cassie and Kidd, it was now the defense's turn to push back, not with emotion, but with strategy, law, and sharp cross-examination. Leading this team is Mark, a man who has stood at the helm of some of the most sensational cases in recent memory. Known for defending NXIVM cult leader and pharma executive Martin, is no stranger to media frenzies or complex legal terrain. His presence in court has been both commanding and deliberate. Every time he stands, the room quiets and jurors lean in just slightly closer, aware that his questions are more than queries. They are traps laid with purpose. When it came time to address Cassie Ventura's emotional testimony, where she detailed years of alleged abuse, coercion, and manipulation, took a moment, and then methodically began to paint a different picture. According to the defense, what the public had been fed were emotionally charged recollections that didn't match the documented reality. They introduced private messages and emails between Cassie and Combs that showed not fear or resistance, but what called willing engagement in their relationship. He carefully suggested that what Cassie had described was not the reality of someone trafficked or manipulated, but someone who, although perhaps in a complicated and unhealthy relationship, was not controlled in the way the prosecution claimed. Supporting is the daughter of the famed lawyer Mark. Isn't new to the courtroom either. She's handled federal cases involving serious allegations, and her tone is often cooler, sharper. In the latest hearing, she played a key role during the testimony of former Combs employees, especially when cross-examining a former assistant who claimed to have seen and heard things inside Combs' homes that, in her words, would scar anyone. Calmly dismantled the assistant's timeline, pointed out contradictions in her deposition versus what she said on the stand, and carefully alluded to the assistant's departure from Combs, employment being less than amicable. "Bitterness is not a crime," she said at one point, turning to the jury, "but it can lead to bad memory." Steele, known for his tenacity in defending rapper Young Thug, brought his aggressive courtroom style to this case too. He was assigned to tackle the claims made by Kid, whose testimony came as a bombshell. Had under oath that after a personal conflict with Combs over Cassie, his was firebombed outside his home. Steele stood up, and with a tone that teetered between disbelief and disbelief, began questioning the lack of official documentation. "Mister, did you file a police report when your car exploded?" Replied that his team handled everything, but no actual police report surfaced in court. Steele used this moment to highlight what he called an atmosphere of accusation without accountability, suggesting that memory or motivation might not be aligned with truth but with headlines. Then there's a New York defense attorney with deep courtroom roots, stepped in during the discussion about financial transactions tied to the alleged trafficking operation. The prosecution argued that Combs had used a network of shell companies to facilitate illegal activity, stood up, firm and composed, and broke down financial documents for the jury in simple terms. "These are payments for studio rentals, tour expenses, hotels, promotional work," he said. He reminded jurors that in the entertainment industry, money moves fast, often without every detail noted on paper. "Confusion," he said, "is not proof of a crime." Acting as a jury consultant and legal advisor, didn't cross-examine, but her influence was visible. She was spotted briefing the defense daily and carefully observing jurors' facial expressions as witnesses took the stand. When the defense presented their motion to strike several pieces of evidence due to lack of chain-of-custody documentation, it was believed that behind-the-scenes strategy was instrumental in the decision to file that motion at exactly the right time, hitting the prosecution while they were focused on witness narratives. With her deep appellate experience, spoke up when the prosecution attempted to introduce a string of emails as evidence to suggest an ongoing conspiracy. Objected, arguing that the emails were out of context and prejudicial. She emphasized that introducing such evidence without cross-verification violates due process and muddies the factual water for jurors. Her objection led to a heated sidebar, during which judge considered whether to allow the emails. In the end, only a portion was admitted, a small but important win for the defense. Even more fascinating was the dynamic in court between the defense and the judge. At one point, comments made outside court by Mark, though not officially part of the team, caused a stir. He referred to the prosecution team as a six-pack of white women during a podcast, prompting a stern rebuke from judge. While clarified that her father's comments were made in a personal capacity and did not reflect courtroom proceedings, the moment added another layer of complexity to the already sensational trial. In terms of strategy, the defense is now turning its focus to drawing a line between Combs the public figure and Combs the man. In their narrative, the superstar's life has been under a microscope for decades. They argue that many of these allegations, particularly those that suddenly emerged in lawsuits years after the fact, are built on the shifting sands of memory, media influence, and in some cases, opportunism. Made this clear in court. The law doesn't operate on rumor, nor should a jury. The defense also addressed the broader allegations of a sex ring and racketeering operation, and both worked to disassemble the racketeering framework laid out by the prosecution, claiming that business expenses and tour operations were being misinterpreted as tools of a criminal conspiracy. They asked jurors to consider how easily fame and wealth can be weaponized when combined with revenge or resentment. As the trial heads into its next phase, Diddy's defense team appears poised and confident. They know that the prosecution's case has landed powerful emotional punches, but they also believe juries decide on facts, not feelings. Their goal is not only to protect Diddy from legal consequences, but also to reframe public perception. The courtroom is now the stage where his legacy may either crumble or endure. But what about Diddy's family? Did they stand by him through all this? Their response might surprise you. Since the trial resumed in early May, starting on May 5, Diddy's mother, Combs, and several of his children have made regular appearances at court. Among them were his twin daughters, Jessie and just 17 years old. From the very beginning, their presence wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, calm, and deeply emotional. They didn't speak to reporters or wave at cameras. They simply walked into the courtroom, sat behind their father, and showed what it means to stand by someone you love, even when the world seems to be falling apart. But standing by him hasn't been easy. As testimonies rolled out day after day, the details became more graphic, more intense, and harder to listen to. Witnesses described dark stories of coercion, violence, and fear. The courtroom became a place where disturbing truths, or alleged truths, were unpacked in front of family members who once only knew the man on trial as a father or son. For Jessie, and that weight eventually became too much. On one particularly graphic day in mid-May, as the testimony turned extremely explicit, both daughters quietly left the courtroom. They didn't make a scene. They just walked out, eyes low, clearly overwhelmed. That moment, small but raw, said more than any statement ever could. Their exit wasn't ignored. It rippled across social media. Some praised them for showing strength, others questioned why they were there at all. The criticism wasn't always kind. Former singer Ud, once part of Diddy's world, publicly slammed him, calling it selfish for making his kids sit through such explicit material. "They don't belong there," she said, voicing what many were thinking but few had the courage to say. The trial wasn't just putting Diddy on the stand. It was emotionally exposing his family too. Despite all that, the Combs children didn't back down. In a rare and heartfelt public statement released around May 17, they spoke out. "The past month has devastated our family," they wrote. "Many have judged both him and us based on accusations, conspiracy theories, and false narratives that have spiraled into absurdity on social media. We stand united, supporting you every step of the way." The message was simple but powerful. They were hurt, but they weren't turning away. Still, the emotional cost is hard to measure. Walking into court every day, being stared at, whispered about, heckled outside the courthouse, it's more than most teenagers or even adults should ever have to endure. And yet they did, clinging to each other, their grandmother never far behind. Photos from May 18 and 19 showed her holding her hands, keeping them close, almost like a shield. Her face was stoic, but every line told a story. She's seen her son rise to fame, build an empire, and now face its possible collapse. For a mother, that's an impossible position. Out in public, the pressure was relentless. There were moments outside the courthouse when bystanders shouted at the family. Accusations, insults, blame, not just at Diddy, but at the people who still loved him. It's the painful price of being related to someone on trial for such serious allegations, regardless of guilt or innocence. No one wants to imagine what it's like to be shouted at for simply standing by your father, but that's what they endured. And yet behind the scenes, those close to the family say they've leaned heavily on one another. Family friends have stepped in, particularly for Jessie, and trying to keep their world as normal as possible amid the storm. It's not easy. These girls grew up in the public eye, but never like this. Now even going to school or seeing friends is different. There are whispers, questions, doubts, and they are only 17. Some reports suggest that Diddy has asked his family to focus on staying together, keeping private matters off social media and protecting each other. In a way, it's the only thing he can control right now. While his legal team battles in court, his daughters and mother are his emotional armor. And he, in turn, is trying, perhaps too late, to shield them from the consequences of a life that was never supposed to touch them like this. One source close to the family mentioned that after court, the children don't talk much about the case. They try to do normal things, watch movies, cook, avoid Twitter, but it's always there looming. Whether Diddy is found guilty or not, his children's lives have already changed forever. Their view of the man they called Dad is now tangled up in courtrooms, headlines, and pain. As for She Remains the Rock, she's been seen whispering to Diddy during breaks, offering comforting smiles to the children, and even exchanging a few strong words with reporters trying to snap photos. She's not just a mother, she's a protector now, a grandmother, a force holding a broken family together with quiet determination. It's easy to forget in cases like this that behind every headline there are human beings, children, mothers, families trying to figure out what to do when someone they love becomes the center of a national storm. Diddy's family isn't perfect. Their support hasn't gone unquestioned, but it has been real, raw, painful, and unwavering. Whether you believe the accusations or not, one thing is clear. This trial isn't just reshaping Diddy's legacy, it's rewriting the emotional reality of an entire family. And in courtrooms like this, sometimes the most powerful voices are the ones that don't speak a word. They just sit, listen, cry, and hold on to each other a little, hoping it will all somehow make sense. What are your thoughts on Kid's testimony, and how is it going to change Diddy's fate? Share in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more updates.